We'll be careful. So tell me, look at Lisa's father.
If you could be anywhere right now, anywhere on this planet, just because putting a line across our horizon line. So it doesn't have to be right down the middle. In the original painting, it's probably about like a third of the way down. So a good indicator is at least taller than your hand. I have baby hands. My hands are really small, so I typically aim a little bit higher than that. If you got a lot and drag my brush all the way across, this line does not need to be perfect. You can kind of adjust it as needed. Lucky for us, the background is black and it will cover up any mistakes that you have. So just get some nice yellow, trace it all the way around. Here in this corner. The colors, if you kind of peek up here as you guys finish up, the colors are maybe about 2 fingers wide. So basically 2, maybe 3 fingers wide. We'll start with some yellow, great, because we already have some yellow. We'll put a little bit more. And then after that, we'll put some of this hot pink that we have. It's probably gonna blend with the yellow, make some oranges. And then lastly, we'll mix up a little bit of dark purple and we'll put that right above. I'm gonna bring it up at least a half of an inch. If you do more, that's totally fine. I'd rather you do too much than too little. Because bottom, I don't include that bumpiness in it because as you're blending, you're picking up a lot more red than you think you are. So wipe it off. I'm gonna wipe it off a little bit. That line has disappeared. It's still kind of streaky, which I don't mind. I think it makes it look kind of like a sky, more natural, has like some... So I wiped off my brush. And then just right where those 2 colors touch, go side to side. Work your way down a little bit into your yellow. And then back up into that red. If you have a lot of that reddish pink on your brush, again, just wipe it off. For me, we have that hot pink. I'm just gonna grab a little chunk of hot pink and then a tiny little smidgen, little half scoop of blue. So mostly pink and a little half scoop of blue, mix that together and it's gonna make purple, believe it or not. Is just add maybe a little less than a half an inch. So just go right above your pink. This color is also a little, if you're already blending, good for you. If you have not started blending yet, just forewarning, careful. The purple will take over. It's such a dark color. And mostly touch your pink. Mostly touch your pink and then maybe just touch your purple a little bit. Move down a little bit into your pink. A little bit down into your pink and then back up. You just want to blend it slightly. It's going to be streaky. Just careful not to bones to it just because I added that little bit of brown. You need enough to fill in your entire moon. So if you mix this and you only have enough to cover your brush and nothing left over, that's probably not going to be enough. Mix up a little bit more. Once you do have the color that you want, whatever color you guys are mixing, you could do like a baby blue moon too. Like you have that pretty blue there, like a lot of white and a little bit of blue, like that would make a really cool color. Or purple, like the sky's the limit, literally. Dad jokes. Who made your own colors. If you did something other than yellow, you just need to have a darker version of whatever color you're using. So if you made a baby blue, just use the plain blue because it's darker. If you made left over some of the color that I used for my moon, whatever's left over, there's not a whole lot, but I'm going to use whatever's left over, and I'm just going to add some colors to it to make it darker, okay? I, again, don't need that much. So like for instance, if I scrape, I'm going to add a little tiny scoop of brown, and then a little tiny scoop of that bright pink to that same yellow mixture. Mix that together. It's going to make this kind of like burnt red color, So again, I know it's shiny. Warmer than what it's showing up on camera. Depending on what TV you're watching on, a computer, a laptop, everyone's cameras, it's something in the realm of like kind of burnt red or burnt orange, then you're doing it right. Even if it's a really brown, that's okay. This darker color on my brush. So I'm going to scrape off my brush here on the side of my plate. I'm going to grab a little bit with the tip of my brush, just a little bit. I'm going to show you two ways to add texture. I like to do snowballs and then I blend out my snowballs. So I'll show you what I mean. So I do little taps and pulls. So I'm kind of tilting, you can see I'm tilting my brush to the side, and I'm gonna make a little snowball right there. A little tiny snowball right here. Again, you guys can watch for a second. And then I'm kind of out of paint, which is great because then I can go out and blend my snowball out. So if you keep peeking up here, I have my snowball, and then right along that edge, I'm doing little taps, and I'm blending and tapping that color out until it fades into my moon. It's not going to be a perfect blend, so if I bring to crumble up your paper towel into a really, really small ball, so I'm using like a half of a paper towel, a really small paper towel. Grab a little bit of that color there on your paper towel. You don't need much. You can see I just have a little bit there on the tip of my paper towel. And then you can tap it on your moon. The texture is going to be quite different. It's going to be a little bit more splotchy. But you can kind of do it in the same way, where you start stronger at first with kind of more of a soft into the rest of the moon. As you're tapping, it is a-okay for you to tap past the moon. Honestly, I would encourage it. Blend all the way to those edges. Don't ignore that edge, otherwise it looks like it has like a perfect outline around it and it doesn't look very natural. Add a few pockets of this, whether you use, again, a crumpled paper towel or your paintbrush. And if all else fails, you're like, man, this moon got drunker than me. You can wait for it to dry, you can paint over it and do it again. Like I said, you have access to this video for 4 days. Again, I'm going to try to kind of keep it in just some areas. I'm okay with it overlapping a little bit into that darker color. Starting along my edge. Kind of the similar technique where you start with a thicker amount of white and then you let your paper towel or paintbrush run out of paint and you start to slowly tap or dab away from that area. Scoop of black. And then a little dab-a-rooney of white. Careful when you grab your white. Don't dip into the middle of your white and dirty the whole thing. Don't do that to yourself. Save some clean white for later. Blue, but it's going to kind of have like this like stormy, grayish tone to it with that black and white being added. As we are going, peek up here real quick. With your dirty brush, it doesn't matter at what point. You don't have to get to this point before you add this. You can do this at any point while you add water. As you go, every so often, grab yourself a little bit of white, and let's add a few random streaks of white in there. They're going to look extra ugly at first, but that's okay. We're going to make it pretty. Long brush strokes, left to right. Go over it a couple of times. It is going to mix it into that water. You're going to see it's going to make really subtle streaks in our water. Again, we're just building up texture. You look scary. They don't like stimuli. They're like, you know, we need to have chill vibes technique. So I like to use mostly the tip of my brush. I might tilt it a little bit and then kind of dab. I'll get really close because I know this is hard to see. So So at first the wave's going to be kind of thicker, and then as I dab in, let it get a little bit thinner until it fades into your water. So I'll grab a little bit more. I'll do like another little one, like maybe right here. So at first it's going to look like a weird log, but you just want to tap lighter at the end so it fades into your water. So you can see up here in this upper left-hand corner, you kind of see like there's like a hint of some waves over there. Just add a couple of them. Mine are farther spaced apart just because I had like a lighter highlight in between and you couldn't really see it, so I spaced it over a little bit more. I'm going to do from this edge, grabbing a little bit of this mixture. If it looks really, really, really light, if it looks really, really pastel-y and it's showing up way too much, you got to add a little bit more blue and a little bit more black to it. Dab it over. Make it uneven, make it random. You can see mine up close. It's got lots of random texture to it. Even has like some wiggles to it. Keep it very, very random. Great thing about these waves, if you hate them, if they don't look good, blend it out with some of that darker blue from earlier. I would say ratio-wise, 80% blue, 20% white. And you're going to get a really nice, bright sky blue. And then adding this color to your brush. Nice bright sky blue. Make sure it's nice, well unmixed. You're gonna add a little touch of this sky blue, just here and there, into those waves. It's not gonna change the color drastically, but it should add some secondary texture to it and make it a little bit brighter in some areas, just in case if yours do not stand out that well. Super pastel, and they're very, very light. You can again go back with some of those darker colors from the background and maybe dab some of that in there. I feel like I just pops of this bright blue sitting on top of it, just so it's not so solid. Finish that up. We're gonna go back in, fix up the edges of our moon, because I know some of us, they're probably a little rough. We're gonna fix up the edge right down to our purple. It's just plain black for this step. Like, it's super straightforward. So I like to start from the top of my canvas and just work my way down. Just, I don't know, personal preference. I think it's just because my arm gets tired of not bringing the black down into the color. Stop at the purple. Stop at the... What I'm gonna do is lightly blend where the black and the blue, or blue, it's purple, where the black and the purple touch. I would recommend using your little brush. You can watch me real quick, and then we'll take a break. Have a little tiny bit of water on your brush. You want the black to be a little bit wet along this line. So just right where that purple and black touch, with a little bit of water and a tiny bit of black, we're gonna fake blend. Obviously the purple is not wet, so it's not gonna actually move any of the purple anywhere. But it's going to kind of bring some like watered down black down over top a little bit, just to smudge that line, just so that way whatever straight line that you guys have is in our water. And then we'll have some yellow highlights and then some bright white highlights, and then that's pretty much it. So we don't really have a whole lot left. A good amount of stuff though that we still have to just jump right on in. So hopefully you're back in your seats. If you're not, literally says like don't drink. I'm off really good. Oh, thank you. Using our big brush now, we need to make a pink mixture that we're going to use for both our water as well as the clouds. It's a pretty easy mixture to use. It's going to be there on the screen. So I'm going to mix it on whatever dries. Crazy with the white, okay? I want this color to still be mostly pink. So just like the tiniest bit of white. You can always add more. A super tiny scoop of white, and then completely submerge it. Take it out of your water, whatever water is on it, mix it into that mixture. I know that your water is not cute right now. It is dirty, it is gross. That's okay, it's not gonna matter. So water. My water, I wanted to thin it down. It thinned it down a little bit, but I had a lot of paint that I put on my plate, so I'm gonna do one more dip of water. Just add this straight up pink onto our painting. On the original painting, the pinks are a lot more see-through, very, very subtle, and the water kind of helps make the pink be more translucent. Grab just a tiny bit on your brush, and we're going to start off by adding this in our water. I want to add it into the water first because it's going to have to dry before we add the other highlights. In the original painting, so I had two long waves. I had one right here, and then one right here. On just a little section, a little off-center, there's going to be a little section here, and a little section here that has it. It's literally done the same exact way we would have done the waves earlier, just a little bit of this pink mixture. You're going to lightly dab right on top of your wave. At first, it's going to be kind of thick pink. It should be kind of see-through though. If it's not see-through at all, then that means you don't have enough water in your mixture. So thickish at first, and then just like with the other waves, towards the end, tap lighter and lighter and lighter until it fades into your one other spot. You can probably I spy it, see it right on your screen. There is another little area that goes right through this midsection. Careful with this section, don't glob up the paint. If you make it too thick, it's not going to dry in time for us to get any paint. I'm barely touching my canvas. If I press too hard, I'm going to add too much. So I'm just going to add a little bit, mostly towards the middle, and then really fade it towards the edge. It's barely anything. I'll add it to this one as well. And I'm happy with that. So you can see it's not too overwhelming. I didn't add it all the way to the rest of the pink, just mainly in that midsection, lightly tapped it out. I'll do the same thing up here to this guy. A little bit. Less is more. Chant that over and over. Less is more. Less is more. Don't add too much. Leave it not to add too much paint though, because I really want this to dry as quickly as possible. So I don't have globs of paint on there. It's flattish on the bottom. thicker towards the middle and kind of pointy on the edge. If you struggle with like only using the tip of your bristles and getting it nice and wispy, you could use your finger to kind of help wisp it out. You'll be surprised, this pink, even if it looks kind of bright, it dries really dark. So if it's looking kind of bright at first, don't worry about it too much. Just let it sit and dry. Some of them can be spaced apart. Doesn't really matter. If you like solely just using your finger to finger paint, you could just take your finger and just kind of dab on little clouds and kind of sketch it on that way. I think it's more successful with the brush, but again, add more. You can go back with that same mixture and you can just add a little bit more on top and it'll start to slowly lighten those up. My brush, and I'm gonna do our last step. The last bit of this is the water. The water's pretty easy peasy. Yellow underneath. Highlights, I always describe it, it might narrow it down a little bit smaller towards the very, very end. And then we'll come back and add some white on top of it, alrighty? So using my little brush, depending on what brush you have, if it's very thin and very see-through, it's gonna make it look kind of green because the blue's gonna show through. So as a thickener, I'm gonna add a little bit of white. My poor white, it's hard to see, but it's a disaster. Little tiny scoop of white. It's gonna make it a lighter yellow. Try to keep your lines kind of straight-ish. Don't go in like random diagonal angles. Side to side, I'm gonna add these lines. Let me add a few and then I'll bring it closer to you guys so you guys can see. We're gonna have gaps. It's gonna be very, very random. So I added a few, so I'll get a little bit closer. Do, 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 do. Nope, this way. There we go. So going side to side, I'm going right over top my pink. That's totally fine. But you can see like the general idea is trying to get them going flat, random and choppy. White is pretty thick though. It's kind of hard to get it to drag. A little trick is to just wet your brush a little bit with some water when you go to grab your white, and that will help the white drag a tiny bit more. Then with the yellow, totally cool. Because those two techniques, those longer lines, it's the same as the yellow. As long as you got that, then you know how to do it. Ones in the middle, just a little bit more paint, and I'm going to do more of like a tapping technique, just to make it look a little bit more globby. Kind of like a similar technique to how I added the globbiness here for our waves. It's extra. You don't have to do it. It is not on the original painting, but it's really cute. I'll show you what it looks like, just in case if you want to do more stuff in your sky, especially if you hate your clouds and you do not want to have them. You can completely cover them up with black, and you can go back, even if you have clouds on here, you can have stars too, but this is just an option to fill in your sky. Not on the original one, and dip it into plain white. And you can go through and add little tiny white dots all over your sky to make little stars.